Hello everyone, welcome to Cashcroft TV. My name is Kalen Ashcroft. Thank you very much for watching this video on Ages of Empire, where we will be covering Ur-Nammu of the Empire of Summer and Sargon of the Akkadian Empire. So some of you might note that a lot of people don't believe Summer to be an empire. However, on the original list I found, it was included as an empire, and there is a bit of a debate as to what is an empire and what is not, but nonetheless some do consider the Akkadian Empire as the first empire itself, and in the previous episode we covered the Lagash Empire as well, which is in sort of the similar Mesopotamian region, so also sort of encompassed in Summer as well, whereas the Akkadian Empire came up. So just a little bit of overlaps nonetheless here, but I think it's important to cover Summer, the Akkadian Empire, and Lagash, and also as we previously did with the old Empire of Egypt, or old Egyptian Empire. The style of this is firstly in the style of Plutarch's Lives, so we will focus on two major leaders from each of the respective empires, and then we'll have a comparison of the two at the end to learn a little bit more about both of them. Furthermore, the name is based off one of a great old video game called Ages of Empire. However, this is plural because it's Ages of Empires. And lastly, it's the structure of each empire will be focused on the rise and fall, both because of the rise and fall of the Third Reich, which I believe is also named after the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, which I do have a somewhere around here, a 150-year-old copy, which I'm currently progressing through volume 1, and I'll progress through the whole thing, hopefully, throughout the course of this series. So, without further ado, we will begin with Ur-Nammu of the Empire of Summer, and then continue to Sargon of the Akkadian Empire. So, starting with the Empire of Summer, and then we will discuss the biography of Ur-Nammu, pardon me. So, the Summer Empire, often regarded as one of the earliest known civilizations in human history, emerged in the southern region of Mesopotamia, which is in modern-day Iraq, around 4,500 BCE. However, we could even date it further back to as far as 5,500 BCE. So this is really so long ago, it's really hard to measure. The explorative journalist, who I do admire, Graham Hancock, notes that there was an ice age about 14,000 years ago, so this is sort of even getting close back towards then. But this Summer is often considered the first civilization we have on record. This ancient civilization thrived for nearly 2 millennia, leaving an indelible mark on human development, culture, and governance. By this rise and fall, history will chronicle the remarkable rise and eventual decline of the Summer Empire from its humble beginnings to its ultimate fall. So starting with the emergence of Summer, we will focus on the dates between 4,500 BCE to 3,200 BCE, although perhaps it even started a thousand years even before this. However, the origins we might note as 4,500 BCE. So the origins of Summer lie in the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where a collection of city-states gradually coalesced. These early settlements, including Eridu, Uruk, and Ur, relied on agriculture, and the unpredictable flooding of the rivers necessitated the development of sophisticated irrigation systems. This fostered a sense of communal effort and cooperation, leading to the emergence of complex societies. Around 3,500 BCE, the Sumerians began recording their achievements and stories through the use of cuneiform script, the earliest known form of writing. This allowed for the establishment of legal codes, record keeping, and the dissemination of knowledge, all of which were crucial to the Sumerian civilization's continued growth. Moving to section 2, the dawn of city-states from 3,200 BCE to 2,800 BCE. By 3,200 BCE, several prominent city-states had risen to prominence, each with its own distinct identity and governance. So this is where the criticism that it wasn't necessarily an empire, because they were largely self-governing, as to say that the city-states of Greece were one empire, but nonetheless I think it's important to focus on Summer as it's probably likely the oldest civilization. that we have on record. Uruk, under the leadership of King Gilgamesh, became one of the most influential cities, exerting its influence through trade networks and military might. This period saw the emergence of the first Sumerian dynasties, with kings asserting their authority over city-states. The construction of monumental architecture, including the ziggurats, towering temple complexes, demonstrated both the wealth and religious devotion of the Sumerians. The city-states also engaged in conflicts over resources and territory, leading to the development of early forms of warfare. So there were fights between them, but there was also periods of time where they were sort of grouped together under either through agreement or through a common leader. Moving to section 3, Sumerian achievements and innovations from 2800 BCE to 2300 BCE. This period between 2800 BCE and 2300 BCE is often considered the zenith of the Sumerian civilization. During this time, the Sumerians made significant strides in various fields, including mathematics, astronomy, and literature. The Sumerians developed the earliest known system of writing numbers based on the sexagesimal system, which forms the basis of modern timekeeping and geometry. I think because I think it might be based in sixth, but I'm not entirely sure. But nonetheless, it's the basis of timekeeping, which is hours are divided into 60 minutes, so perhaps some connection there. And furthermore, geometry, where we have 360 degrees. Prominent Sumerian literary works, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, the previously mentioned king, offer insight into the religious beliefs, values, and social structures. The city of Ur, under the reign of King Ur-Nammu, who will be discussed shortly, produced the world's first known legal code, known as the Code of Ur-Nammu, which established a system of justice and governance. So in terms of civil codes, we have many, and this is the first. Moving to section 4, the Akkadian conquest and the Akkadian Empire between 2300 BCE to 2100 BCE. So we will also focus more on the Akkadian Empire specifically following this. But around 2300 BCE, Sumer faced a formidable external threat from the Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon, who will also be discussed. Sargon the Great. Sargon's forces swiftly conquered many Sumerian city-states, creating the first known multi-ethnic empire in history. So perhaps some might have just been a group of city-states that sometimes agreed, sometimes disagreed, but under the Akkadian Empire was formerly a multi-ethnic empire. Despite the dominance of the Akkadians, elements of Sumerian culture and language persisted, however, so I think it's still important to cover Sumer, demonstrating the enduring influence of the Sumerian civilization. Moving to section 5, the third dynasty of Ur and the decline, 2100 BCE to 2000 BCE. Following the fall of the Akkadian Empire, the Sumerians experienced a brief resurgence under the third dynasty of Ur. King Ur-Nammu and his successors sought to revive Sumerian traditions, including cultural practices, religion, and administrative systems. However, this revival was short-lived as the empire succumbed to internal strife and external pressures from neighboring regions. Moving to section 6, the end of Sumer, 2000 BCE to 1900 BCE. The latter half of the second millennium BCE witnessed a series of invasions by neighboring peoples, including the Elamites and Amorites. These incursions further weakened the Sumerian city-states, making them vulnerable to outside domination. By 1900 BCE, the last vestiges of Sumerian independence had faded, marking the end of the Sumer Empire. So although the Akkadian Empire for a time did control Sumer, or at least many of the city-states, it was ultimately, they had a resurgence, and then it was two other, including the Elamites and Amorites, who ultimately sort of eradicated or destroyed the Sumerian Empire, or led to its ultimate decline. To the conclusion here, so the Sumer Empire stands as a testament to the remarkable achievements of early human civilization, From its modest beginnings in the fertile Mesopotamian plains, Sumer blossomed into a sophisticated society marked by advances in writing, likely the first form of writing we have on record, mathematics, how to pronounce it, the sexagesimal system, and and governance as well. Despite facing numerous challenges, including external invasions and internal conflicts, the legacy of the Sumerians endures in the annals of human history, shaping the course of subsequent civilizations and leaving an indelible mark on the world. So that is the sort of brief history of the rise and fall of the Sumerian Empire. So now to focus on one specific leader, who I think was easy to locate, who the most important leader to sort of the Sumerian times would be Ur-Nammu, what might call the architect of Sumerian civilization. So starting with an introduction, Ur-Nammu, a ruler of the third dynasty of Ur, stands as one of the most significant and influential figures in the history of Sumer. He reigned during a pivotal period in Sumerian history, known for his profound impact on governance, law, religion, and culture. We will now delve into his life, achievements, and lasting legacy of Ur-Nammu, highlighting his role as the most important ruler of Sumer during his era. Starting with Section 1, Early Life and Ascent to Power, circa 2102 BCE to 2095 BCE. So Ur-Nammu was born in Ur, hence his name perhaps, one of the prominent Sumerian city-states located in the southern region of Mesopotamia. It must be noted that it wasn't necessarily the capital, because there wasn't necessarily a capital city, but because he rose to be probably the most prominent leader, it could be seen as at least one of, likely the most important at the time. The exact details of his early life and family background remain obscure, but it is believed that he was a military leader before ascending to the throne. Ur-Nammu's rise to power came during a period of political instability in Sumer, with several city-states vying for dominance. In 2102 BCE, Ur-Nammu seized the throne of Ur, marking the beginning of his reign. His leadership would ultimately transform Ur into the capital of a powerful and centralized Sumerian state. So Ur wasn't always the capital, but during his time it ultimately did. And it's also important to note that he actually seized the power, so he wasn't necessarily appointed. Moving to Section 2, Consolidation of Power and Reforms, circa 2095 BCE to 2080 BCE. So upon ascending to the throne, Ur-Nammu embarked on a series of ambitious reforms aimed at consolidating his power and establishing a more equitable and just society. These reforms touched on various aspects of Sumerian life and governance, leaving an indelible mark on civilization, as like the indelible mark on that Sumer had generally. So starting with Section A, Legal Code. Ur-Nammu is best known for commissioning the world's earliest legal code, as previously mentioned, the Code of Ur-Nammu. This code laid the foundation for the concept of written law and codified a wide range of legal norms and relations. It was a significant departure from earlier customary laws and promoted fairness and justice in Sumerian society. The code covered various aspects of life, including poverty rights, family law, and criminal offenses. So not even that much different from some of the similar codes we have today. It's important to note that, however, there's at the end of on the old regime in the French Revolution by Alexis de Tocqueville, he notes that the mastery of the Roman law was that they mastered the civil law, not as in civil law versus common law, but civil law, the laws between people, but neglected the political law. So from the readings here, including life, property rights, and family law, that is sort of civil law things. However, it also has criminal offense, which is political too. So even this first civil code covered, at least to some extent, both the political and the civil laws. Moving to Section B, Administrative Reforms. Ur-Nammu established a more efficient and centralized bureaucracy to govern his expanding territory. He appointed officials to oversee provinces, ensuring uniformity in administration. This system allowed for better resource management and the enforcement of the law. So as we saw, some of the difficulties with the Old Kingdom of Egypt Empire, as for example, is the decline of its centralized government. It lost that central appeal, or lost that central strength. So what perhaps made Ur-Nammu strong and Sumer strong at the time was its centralized government. That doesn't necessarily say all empires, as we might see going forward, are stronger with centralized government, but at least it's sort of starting to seem like a common theme amongst these earliest Mesopotamian empires that centralized government was one of the leading causes of making them strong, but ultimately their decline in centralization or decentralization led to many of their collapses. Moving to section C, economic prosperity. Under Ur-Nammu's rule, the Sumerian economy thrived. He prompted agriculture, trade, and industry, resulting in increased wealth and prosperity for the region. The construction of canals and irrigation systems facilitated agricultural production, contributing to economic growth. So as we saw also with Lagash and the Old Kingdom of Egypt, trade was even very important in these earliest empires. Moving to section D, religious reforms. So Ur-Nammu also played a significant role in religious life. He constructed grand temples and ziggurats, including the renowned ziggurat of Ur, dedicated to the moon god Nanna. These religious structures served as both places of worship and symbols of Sumerian power and devotion. So I think the latter point is particularly important, in that I think to have a strong central government, it's important to have these monuments at least to show the strength of a leader. Moving to section 3, cultural and architectural achievements circa 2080 BCE to 2050 BCE. So Ur-Nammu's reign was marked by a cultural and architectural renaissance for Sumer, thus making him likely the most important or one of the most significant leaders in Sumer. His patronage of the arts and architecture enriched the cultural heritage of the region and reflected the grandeur of his rule. So that's something that's common in or importantly noted by Gibbons in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, is that it wasn't just the emperors who were engaging in all the development of monuments and aqueducts and such, but there was also much patronage as well. Many of the private citizens also invested in these the greatness of Rome, and this seems to be true also for this empire as well. Starting with Ziggurat of Ur, perhaps the most famous architectural achievement of Ur-Nammu's reign was the Ziggurat of Ur. This massive stepped temple tower dedicated to the moon god Nanna was a symbol of Sumerian religious devotion and technical prowess. It featured a monumental staircase and a central shrine, showcasing Sumerian architectural ingenuity. Moving to art and literature, section B. Ur-Nammu's era witnessed a flourishing Sumerian art and literature. Artists created intricate pottery, sculptures, and seals, often depicting scenes from daily life and religious myths. Sumerian literature, including hymns, poetry, and epic tales, thrived during this period, contributing to the rich tapestry of Sumerian culture. Moving to section C, the cuneiform script. Ur-Nammu's reign saw advancement in the use of cuneiform script, which is probably the first writing we know to date, the earliest known system of writing. So in fact it is the earliest, but that might be found different. I wonder if Graham Hancock has shown that there have been likely many civilizations, perhaps even greater than Sumer before Sumer, but as far as modern information holds, the cuneiform script is the earliest writing system. Clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform were used for administrative records, literature, and religious texts, preserving knowledge and culture for future generations. So perhaps the reason why Sumer is considered the oldest civilization is that the previous civilizations did not have a cuneiform script or did not have a form of writing, so therefore we have no way of tracing them. So moving to section 4, legacy and downfall, circa 2050 to 2000 BCE. So Ur-Nammu's reign marked a high point for Sumerian culture, characterized by prosperity, innovation, and cultural flourishing. However, like many great leaders of antiquity, his legacy faced challenges and eventual decline. Starting with A, his successors. After Ur-Nammu's death, his successors, including his son Shulgi, attempted to carry on his legacy. However, maintaining the level of central power and efficient governance proved challenging. The empire faced external threats from neighboring regions and internal strife. So, as alluded to earlier, perhaps at least for this empire, it was the decentralization or the weakening central power. That is not, as we will progress throughout time into future empires, it might not be true that a centralized empire is the best or the decentralization causes its decline necessarily, but so far that is the theme. Moving to section B, fall of the third dynasty of Ur. By the early 21st century BCE, the third dynasty of Ur had entered a period of decline. The empire faced invasions from the Elamites and Amorites, as previously mentioned, and Sumerian city-states struggled to maintain their independence. The empire's fall marked the end of the unified Sumerian state. Section C, lasting influence. Despite the fall of the third dynasty, Ur-Nammu's contribution endured. The Code of Ur-Nammu remained a foundational legal text, influencing subsequent legal codes as we even have today, including the famous Code of Hammurabi, as a later civil code that's maybe even more famous, but the Code of Ur-Nammu came before. Sumerian culture and language continued to exert influence on the region for centuries to come, and I would say even today, if that is where the first legal code came, then therefore it still has effects on all civil law countries. And once this is not civil law between people, but civil law in that they rely on a codified law. They're civil law countries. So moving to section 5, conclusion, Ur-Nammu's enduring legacy. So Ur-Nammu, the most important ruler of the Summer in his era, left an indelible mark on the history of ancient Mesopotamia. His reforms in governance, law, and culture shaped the trajectory of Sumerian civilization and influenced the development of legal systems and administrative practices for generations. His architectural achievements and patronage of the arts enriched the cultural heritage of the region. While the empire he built eventually fell, the legacy lives on in enduring concepts of written law, justice, and cultural achievements of ancient Sumer. Ur-Nammu's reign serves as a testament to the transformative power of visionary leadership and enduring contributions of human civilization. So, very great achievements on his end. I think even perhaps greater than some of the structures he built, such as the ziggurat of Ur, is that I think the legal code maybe makes him one of the greatest individuals of all time, in fact. So, without further ado, we will now discuss the content of the slide, and then we will discuss Ur-Nammu a bit more when we move to his comparison with Sargon. So, title Ur-Nammu and the Empire of Sumer. And once again, people might note that the Sumer is not an empire, but at least under Ur-Nammu here, there was an amalgamation of states under one leader. So I think it would qualify as an empire. And nonetheless, it would be negligent to not address Sumer in our history of ages of empires. So the title, earliest known civilization in the historical region of Mesopotamia. Significant leader, as Ur-Nammu, as discussed. Empire of Sumer, period circa 5500 BCE to circa 1475 BCE. However, our history focused on the period between 4500 BC onwards, and due to the eventual decline, but nonetheless it spanned a very long time, but one might call it its pinnacle was in around 2400 BCE. And that's why, in fact, we actually have the Old Kingdom of Egypt and Lagash first, because their actual maybe pinnacle was a little bit higher or a little bit earlier even than the pinnacle of Ur, for example. Million square kilometers is 0.04, or million square miles was 0.02 at its height. Percent of the world, therefore, was 0.04, and that's excluding Antarctica. The first 5 cities were Eridu, Bad Tibira, Larak, Sippar, and Shurapak. The other principal cities include Uruk, Kish, Ur of the capital under Ur-Nammu, Nippur, and Lagash. So Lagash was a city-state within the Empire of Sumer. However, we've differentiated it, and from the original source that I found, it's important to differentiate between Lagash and Sumer, or specifically the Sumer under Ur-Nammu, or the Sumer of Ur. Government, independent city-states, which included a combination of monarchies and theocratic elements. At least under Ur-Nammu it was a monarchy, but it must be noted that he did seize power. But his son did keep power, but slowly lost power, but nevertheless it was hereditary following him. Common language, Sumerian. Religion, polytheistic pantheon, where the Anu was the chief god. Population, hundreds of thousands to low millions, so unfortunately there is no accurate information as to how many people there were, but from between hundreds of thousands to low millions, and probably varied over time. I think it's best to believe that both were true, so maybe under Ur-Nammu it was in the low millions. As for the images, in the top right we have the map of Sumer, located as mentioned between the Tigris and Euphrates. Below that we have Anu Ziggurat and White Temple. So the Anu Ziggurat was created before, and then the White Temple was built on top. On the right we have what it likely looked like before, and on the left we have its modern remains. And then the other two images we have are, this is an image by Jeff Brown, supposedly of some city-state in Sumer, perhaps on either the Tigris or Euphrates River. There seems to be a river going through, but perhaps that river's not wide enough, but nonetheless I thought it was a beautiful image, and it's by Jeff Brown. And below that we have an image of perhaps to some extent recreated monument of Sumer. And in the top left we have the mask of Sumer. There is another famous, the mask of Ur-Nammu. There is another famous mask, but it is likely the mask of his son, but it could be his as well, but this is supposedly his. So we don't necessarily know what his face looked like, but we can kind of guess what his shape might have been. So without further ado, we'll continue on to the Akkadian Empire, and we'll discuss Ur-Nammu a bit more in the comparison with Sargon. So, starting with the rise and fall of the Akkadian Empire, dawn and decline of a seminal civilization, it has been called. So, starting with the introduction, so the Akkadian Empire, founded by Sargon the Great, holds a pivotal place in the annals of human history. Emerging in the 24th century BCE, it was the first known multi-ethnic empire spanning across the fertile plains of Mesopotamia. This history of the rise and fall will delve into the narrative of the Akkadian Empire, exploring its rise, achievements, and, as mentioned, ultimate decline, in the spirit of decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And I think the most important takeaway also, hopefully, from this series is to have a kind of contemporary view as to why some modern empires or modern nations, I think of perhaps the EU or the United States, or for example the Russian groups, or might perhaps decline if they do not. For example, look to history as to why some of these empires, which were the most powerful at their time, inevitably fell. So, Section 1, Emergence of Sargon and the Unification of Mesopotamia, circa 2334 BCE to 2300 BCE. So, Sargon, of uncertain origin but believed to have been born in Azupiranu, arose to prominence in the early 24th century BCE. Through a series of astute military campaigns, he consolidated power over several city-states, including Kish, Uruk, and Ur. So before Ur-Nammu became the leader, that it was actually under Akkadian rule for a time. So that's why the Sumerian empires, think of it more as a civilization, but for parallelism, we have called it an empire, and for a time it was also an empire, but also for a time it was under Akkadian rule. Sargon's ascendancy marked a pivotal moment in Mesopotamian history as he succeeded in uniting disparate city-states under a centralized authority. So starting with Section A, in terms of military strategy. Sargon's rise was characterized. This is Section A within the emergence of Sargon and unification of Mesopotamia. So that's Section A within Section 1. So starting with military strategy, so Sargon's rise was characterized by strategic brilliance and audacity. He organized a standing army equipped with chariots and implemented tactics that allowed him to swiftly conquer neighboring regions. His military conquests extended across the length and breadth of Mesopotamia, laying the foundation for the Akkadian Empire. So it's kind of amazing to me that chariots, like in ancient Rome, they had chariots, and I thought that was innovative technology. But they had chariots in 2000 BCE, and even 2300 BCE, or even 2334 BCE, they had chariots. But obviously a clear military advantage. Moving to section B is to the centralized governance, as alluded to previously. So Sargon's governance was characterized by centralization. He established a bureaucracy to oversee the empire's vast territory, with appointed officials managing provinces. This system facilitated efficient administration and the enforcement of uniform laws. So at least, as we'll see, it was the decentralization the cause of its decline. We shall see, but at least it was one of the causes of its original emergence under Sargon. Moving to section 2, cultural and religious syncretism, circa 2300 BCE to 2200 BCE. So the Akkadian Empire was marked by a dynamic cultural milieu, shaped by the convergence of diverse linguistic and ethnic groups, as mentioned. Sargon recognized the value of preserving cultural heritage of the conquered city-states, resulting in a rich tapestry of Mesopotamian civilization. So perhaps it would have been detrimental if he tried to sort of make all the cultures uniform, or perhaps that might have even helped centralize it. But nonetheless, he was open to appreciating the diversity of cultures under his rule. Moving to section A, under section 2, language and writing. Akkadian, a Semitic language, became the lingua franca of the empire, so the common language across the empire. So Sumerian was also still spoken, but it was on the decline at that time, influencing subsequent Semitic languages in the region. Sumerian cuneiform script, already established, the supposedly oldest writing form system we have ever, persisted alongside Akkadian, reflecting the enduring influence of Sumerian culture. So important to still discuss Sumerian, just whether or not one believes it to be an empire. But I believe at least under Ur-Nammu it was. But moving to section B, art and architecture of section 2. Akkadian art exhibited both indigenous Mesopotamian elements and innovations inspired by the conquests. So as they expanded out, they sort of adopted those art and architecture. Artisans created intricate reliefs and sculptures, often depicting scenes from warfare, religion, and daily life. The architecture of Akkad, the capital, was grandiose, reflecting the empire's newfound prestige. So as alluded to before, having great monuments is definitely not only a symbol of power, but also sort of self-reinforces. And so if, for example, one is a person within the empire and they see this great monument, they might be inspired by its greatness. But furthermore, also the scenes depicting war as well might inspire them to be more courageous in battle, or even to be feared by their enemies. Moving to section 3, Sargon's legacy and successors, circa 2200 BCE to 2150 BCE. Sargon's legacy endured beyond his lifetime. His successors, including Rimush and Manishtushu, attempted to consolidate and expand the empire's territorial holdings. However, maintaining the level of centralized authority proved challenging. So it's alluded to once again, centralization was where it started. But once again, maybe it's not not once again, but maybe to point out that maybe it's not. Maybe the loss of centralization is the effect, not the cause of the decline. So it was perhaps other reasons causing the lack of the decentralization. As they faced internal revolts and external pressures, so as it's hard to maintain central authority. So once again, perhaps it's the effect, the decentralization caused by revolts and external pressures. So moving to section A of section 3, economic prosperity. The empire's economic prosperity continued under Sargon's successors. Agriculture Trade and industry thrived, leading to increased wealth and prosperity for the region. The empire's strategic location in the heart of Mesopotamia facilitated trade routes and economic challenges. Section B, military conquests. Sargon's successors engaged in further military campaigns, expanding the empire's territorial reach. Ramush, in particular, led successful expeditions into Elam and regions to the west, solidifying Akkadian dominance over the Near East. So the empire did not immediately decline after Sargon. However, decentralization did sort of start to creep in, perhaps maybe because they overexpanded, I might hypothesize. If they overexpanded, it would be hard to sort of maintain or consolidate what they already had, in my conjecture. Moving to section 4, the decline and fall of the Akkadian Empire, circa 2150 BCE to 2100 BCE. Where did I put this? Should have been better organizing my pages, but nonetheless I found it. So as the 22nd century BCE dawned, the Akkadian Empire faced a convergence of internal and external challenges that ultimately led to its downfall. So starting with, we'll have A, B, and C causes, starting with A, regional conflicts. The empire confronted external threats from neighboring regions, notably the Gutians from the Zagros Mountains. These conflicts stretched the empire's military resources and weakened its defensive capabilities. Cause number 2, internal dissent. Simultaneously, internal dissent and revolts began to simmer, or began to grow, pardon me, I think that's an error. Provincial governors seeking greater autonomy rebelled against central authority. This internal strife further eroded the empire's stability. So many of these provincial governors wanted power of their own. Perhaps many of them had greater autonomy when they were before Sargon, and they wanted to break out, or perhaps Sargon, or rather, furthermore, his successors were ineffectual in keeping them in the Akkadian Empire. Moving to section C, the final collapse. By 2100 BCE, the empire had fractured beyond repair. The city-states that once comprised the Akkadian Empire reasserted their independence, signaling the end of Sargon's dynastic line and the collapse of the empire he had built. So, moving to section 5, the conclusion, Sargon's enduring legacy and the dawn of the new epochs. The Akkadian Empire, though relatively short-lived, left an indelible mark on human history. Sargon the Great's audacious vision and strategic brilliance laid the groundwork for future empires, influencing the development of governance, culture, and linguistic evolution in the region. While the Akkadian Empire may have succumbed to the pressure of its time, its legacy endured through the succeeding empires and civilizations of Mesopotamia. Sargon's empire set a precedent for the grand empires that would follow, leaving an enduring imprint on the evolving tapestry of human civilization. So as we continue to see empires going forward, we might see how the influence of the Akkadian Empire might have creeped in. So in terms of the biography of Sargon the Great, who is clearly, I think, the greatest leader of the Akkadian Empire, and in this case actually happened to come first as well, so he even created it. So therefore also architect of the Akkadian Empire. So starting with introduction, so Sargon the Great, also known as Sargon of Akkad, the capital city, stands as one of the most significant figures in ancient history generally. Born in the 24th century BCE, he rose from humble origins to become the founder of the Akkadian Empire, the world's first known multi-ethnic empire, if one doesn't consider Sumer an empire. This biography will explore the life, achievements, and legacy of Sargon the Great, shedding light on his extraordinary journey from obscurity to becoming the most powerful ruler in the Akkadian Empire, and I might add, like the most powerful ruler in the world at the time. So starting with section 1, early life and origins, circa 2400 BCE. Sargon's early life is veiled in mystery. with conflicting accounts and legends surrounding his birth and upbringing. According to some historical sources, he was born in Ur-Nammu, a city-state in the region of Sumer, so a Sumerian, perhaps even himself. Well, almost indefinitely, whether it was that city or another city, was most likely a Sumerian, to a temple priestess named Enheduanna. But I might note, though, that if he was born in the region of Sumer, I think he would have been born speaking Akkadian. Otherwise, I don't think he would have prioritized Akkadian as the primary language of the Akkadian Empire. But nonetheless, that is something that one would need to research extensively, and maybe the answer might never be able to be found. But just an idea that just popped in my head. Other accounts suggest he was of humble birth, possibly even a gardener or cupbearer. Regardless of his exact origins, it is clear that Sargon was not born into nobility or royalty. So whether he was a cupbearer, whether he was a gardener, whether he was born in Ur-Nammu or some other place, Akkadian, he was not noble or royalty, which is important to note. In Plutarch's Parallel Lives, there's almost, I wouldn't be able to put a number on it, but many of the leaders were of noble birth, but a good portion as well were also not of noble birth or royalty. But the title of the book is On the Noble Greeks and Romans, so although not necessarily born noble, they nonetheless became noble, and I think that would be true for Sargon. So moving to section 2, rise to power, circa 2334 BCE to 2300 BCE. Sargon's ascension to power was marked by a combination of ambition, military prowess, and political acumen. Around 2334 BCE, he seized control of the city-state of Kish, a significant center of the power in Sumer. This initial conquest provided him with a platform to launch further campaigns, and he began to systematically expand influence over neighboring city-states. So the first one he took was Kish. Important to note, Sargon's military campaigns were characterized by their strategic brilliance and rapidity, perhaps on account of those chariots previously mentioned. He utilized innovations in warfare, including the organization of a standing army and the use of chariots, which gave him a considerable advantage over his adversaries. His conquests extended across the entirety of Sumer, and he eventually established control over the entirety of Mesopotamia. Moving to section 3, foundation of the Akkadian Empire, circa 2300 BCE. With his conquest, Sargon laid the foundation of the Akkadian Empire, the first known empire in history, and unlike previous regional powers that were largely limited to a single city-state or region, the Akkadian Empire encompassed a diverse array of people and cultures, setting a precedent for future empires. And perhaps that might even be one definition of empire, which might necessarily disqualify Sumer, perhaps even the Old Kingdom of Egypt, or Lagash as well, previously covered. So one might make the argument that the Akkadian Empire was the first because it was multicultural. Sargon's administrative genius was instrumental in maintaining cohesion within the empire, and he established a centralized bureaucracy with governors appointed to oversee provinces, each governed by uniform laws and regulations. This allowed for greater efficiency in governance and facilitated the integration of various ethnic and linguistic groups of the empire. Moving to his cultural and architectural contributions, circa 2300 BCE to 2279 BCE. So Sargon's reign was characterized by a flourishing of cultural exchange and innovation. He recognized the value of preserving and promoting cultural achievements of the conquered Sumerian city-states, contributing to a rich tapestry of Mesopotamian civilization. So also, as we noted with Ur-Nammu, who also respected the differences between city-states, so commonality there, which is kind of, as we see, that might not necessarily be true, as we'll see many years later, but at least very clear in the decline, rise and fall of the Third Reich, that Nazism did not necessarily appreciate the cultures of the states they conquered. But So it's not necessarily true for all empires, but nonetheless that one fell as well, and maybe it would have been more successful if it did. Napoleon's empire was quite different, and we will also cover that one soon. But it is similar to Ur-Nammu's empire, or civilization if one might choose to debate it. But at least it did cover multiple city-states, so I think that the argument holds that it is an empire, or I would advocate for that. And it is usually included on lists of empires, particularly the one I refer to. Under Sargon's patronage, the Akkadian language became the lingua franca of the empire, influencing the development of subsequent Semitic languages. He also promoted artistic endeavors, commissioning elaborate artworks and architectural projects. The construction of the city of Akkad, his capital, was a testament to his vision of grand imperial center. So Akkad was created under his time period, but I wonder how how he came to be speaking Akkadian, a different language, as opposed to summer. Perhaps maybe if I could one day meet Graham Hancock, maybe he might know that. Or there's also a very important scholar at the University of Pennsylvania who was the expert on summer, who recently passed away, so I don't know who might be able to share this information with me, but if anyone might know, I'd be grateful to connect with them. Moving to section 5, legacy and downfall, circa 2279 BCE to 2215 BCE. Sargon's legacy extended far beyond his lifetime. His empire laid the groundwork for future imperial ambitions, influencing the likes of Hammurabi, Cyrus the Great, and Alexander the Great. The Akkadian language continued to be a dominant language in the region for centuries to come, while Sumerian slowly declined in popularity. However, as with many empires, the Akkadian Empire faced challenges. Sargon's successors struggled to maintain the same level of centralized authority and unity. The empire faced internal strife and external pressure from neighboring regions. By 2215 BCE, the Akkadian Empire had collapsed, marking the end of Sargon's dynastic line. Conclusion: Sargon's enduring legacy. Sargon the Great's remarkable achievements and contributions to human history cannot be overstated. His rise from obscurity to the pinnacle of power in the world serves as a testament to the potential and individual agency and ambition to shape the course of nations. I note here that as the world, as far as we know it, it's possible there were other empires at this time, but we don't know. There's none that we know of that were greater. The Akkadian Empire, while relatively short-lived, left an indelible mark on the historical landscape, influencing the development of empires and civilizations for millennium to come. Sargon's legacy endures not only in the annals of history, but also in the very concept of empire building and the enduring human quest for power and influence. So, really, very significant leader from zero to the greatest, most powerful emperor in the region at the time. So a huge achievement, but also setting the stone for having a basis for a multicultural empire as well. So we'll discuss the content of the slide here, and then we will continue to a comparison between Ur-Nammu and Sargon. So in the top right, we have the map of the Akkadian Empire, and see where it was extended out. It very much does overlap with the regions of Sumer because it encompassed many of the Sumerian city-states, and once again it's sort of between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. However, it went a bit more up north and west than that of Sumer. As the significant leader, Sargon the Great. Empire, the Akkadian Empire, period 2334 to 2154 BCE, million square kilometers, 0.8, million square miles, 0.31%, of the world, 0.59, so it's actually the biggest we've had so far, even larger than the old Kingdom of Egypt Empire. Capital city, Memphis should be removed again, but Akkad. Government was monarchy, or I would add conqueror, but nonetheless his descendants carried the throne to decreasing levels of success. Common languages, Akkadian and Sumerian was also spoken and declining. Religion, ancient Mesopotamian. Population, hundreds of thousands to low millions, so similar with Sumer, and to what extent it encompassed the city-states of Sumer. But I would make the argument that perhaps at its peak it was in the low millions, and as it declined it went down into the hundreds of thousands and then ultimately collapsed. Region, Mesopotamia, which covers modern-day Iraq, Syria, and it's also noted that possibly in Iran and Turkey, and there's also others such as Cyprus and others, but certainly modern-day Iraq and Syria. Other images, so in the top left we have a mask of Sargon the Great. Next to that we have the Akkadian soldiers. Once again, I mentioned that the images of warfare sort of might have inspired warlike spirit within the population, but also maybe even fear or admiration from those outside of the empire. To the right we have a goddess of Ishtar, one of the pantheon of gods they believed in and prayed to. Or to the right, we have bottom right, we have the Akkadians defending one of their cities. That's not necessarily, we don't necessarily know if it is Akkad, but that is one of them. To the left, we have a beautiful image by Matthew Glennon, supposedly one of the city-states within the Akkadian Empire. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it might have looked like, but nonetheless, it's absolutely beautiful. And looking at the architecture, at least makes inspires one with awe. And look at the colors and the amount of stories is absolutely amazing. And if that is what it looked like, I wish I could go back and see it. And I'd say the same true for some of the city-states in Sumer. And I would like to go back in time and view all these, but nonetheless, this one is particularly beautiful, according to Matthew Glennon. So, as for the comparison between Ur-Nammu and Sargon the Great in the style of Plutarch's Parallel Lives, so founders of ancient empires. So, in introduction to them both, Ur-Nammu of the Sumer Empire, the Sumerian Empire, and Sargon of the Akkadian Empire were two of the most significant figures in Mesopotamian history. Both rulers emerged from humble beginnings to establish powerful empires, leaving enduring legacies that shaped the course of early civilization. This comparison will examine the lives, achievements, and contributions of Ur-Nammu and Sargon, highlighting the distinct approaches they took in building and governing their respective empires. So starting with section 1, background and early life. So starting with Ur-Nammu. So Ur-Nammu was born in Ur, a prominent Sumerian city-state, around 2112 BCE. His precise, this is, as we'll see, is after Sargon. His precise origins remain uncertain, but he likely rose to power through the combination of military prowess and strategic alliances. Some sources suggest he hailed from a priestly background, while others posit more modest origins, so sort of maybe a bigger spread than, as we'll see with Sargon. So priestly, I would say, would be of the more noble class, but others say he was even more from a more modest or completely modest origin. Sargon, also known as Sargon of Akkad, was born around 2400 BCE, possibly in Azapiranu, which is Akkad the city was actually made later under his rule. His early life is shrouded in legend, with tales of humble birth followed by a meteoric rise to power. While historical details are elusive, it is clear that Sargon emerged from outside the established power structures of the time. So, direct comparison here is that Ur-Nammu was born almost 300 years after Sargon. So, as we know, the Akkadian Empire may have been for a time greater, but the Sumerian civilization lasted a longer period, and Ur-Nammu actually came after, even though the Sumerian civilization started before. And it might be noted that Sargon did come from a Sumerian city, likely Azapiranu. But in terms of their beginnings, it's certain that Sargon had most humble beginnings, whereas Ur-Nammu had likely humble beginnings, possibly though priestly class. But nonetheless, both of them went into the military, became military leaders. So rise to power, starting with Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu's rise to power was marked by a combination of military conquests and administrative reforms. He successfully consolidated power in Ur and then expanded his authority over neighboring city-states. So starting local, gained control of the city, and then expanded outwards through military and strategic alliances. Ur-Nammu's reign was characterized by a systematic approach to governance, culminating in the establishment of the third dynasty of Ur. Sargon's ascent was characterized by audacious military campaigns and a vision for a unified empire. He swiftly conquered city-states including Kish, firstly, and Uruk, which were both Sumerian states, and established the Akkadian Empire. Sargon's reign marked the emergence of the first known multi-ethnic empire, uniting diverse cultures under a centralized authority. Ur-Nammu, I would say, did do this later, but Sargon maybe did it earlier. But perhaps one might even consider Sumer united before Sargon. So it's a debate, and I don't necessarily want to take too hard of a stance on either side. But I do think both are important to discuss, and I hope you find that too. Moving to section 3, reforms and achievements, starting with Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu is best known for commissioning the Code of Ur-Nammu, the oldest known legal code in history. This code established a system of justice and governance, providing a framework for law and order within the Sumerian Empire. Additionally, Ur-Nammu initiated cultural and architectural projects, including the construction of Ziggurat of Ur. As for Sargon's achievements extended beyond military conquest. He played a pivotal role in cultural and linguistic integration, making Akkadian the lingua franca of the Akkadian Empire. Sargon's administrative reforms paved the way for efficient governance, with a centralized bureaucracy overseeing the diverse provinces of the empire. So my question I would like to ask somebody, if someone might know, an expert, is that did Ur-Nammu speak Akkadian? Because after Sargon came and sort of brought the Akkadian language into dominance in Mesopotamia, did Sumerian language come back, or did he speak Akkadian? But I think it was that he did speak Sumerian, otherwise he would have been considered perhaps an Akkadian ruler, although he did not come from Akkad. So hard to say, but nonetheless these are details that I cannot confirm, but they're important discussion points. But a clear difference also, Ur-Nammu, his achievement in creating the first legal code, or at least one that has been written, was probably an achievement that Sargon cannot necessarily match, but Ur-Nammu did come after, so perhaps he based it in some ways off some of the laws of Sargon. And in terms of military conquest, I might add that perhaps Sargon was the more successful in terms of military conquest, but nonetheless they were both great in that regard, and perhaps Ur-Nammu was better at making strategic alliances, perhaps. In terms of, and also over centralized bureaucracy and overseeing diverse provinces of the empire. Moving to section 4, their cultural contributions, starting with Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu's reign witnessed a flourishing of Sumerian culture, so coming back into power or to significance after the Akkadian rule. He patronized the arts, resulting in a renaissance of literature, art, and architecture. Ziggurat of Ur and other monumental structures stand as a testament to his cultural contributions. As for Sargon, Sargon's empire was marked by cultural syncretism, as Akkadian became the dominant language. His reign fostered a dynamic cultural exchange between diverse linguistic and ethnic groups, influencing the development of Semitic languages in the region. So perhaps Sargon's influence on language more broadly might be larger than Ur-Nammu, but otherwise Ur-Nammu did contribute perhaps to the re-emergence of Sumerian, or nonetheless operated in a system where both existed. But nonetheless, Sargon really brought the Akkadian language into dominance, at least for a period, but also which contributed significantly to the development of Semitic languages. So in that front, perhaps has greater significance, whereas Ur-Nammu's maybe of greater significance in terms of legal codes. In terms of their section 5, their legacy and downfall. Ur-Nammu, starting with Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu's legacy endures through the Code of Ur-Nammu, which influenced subsequent legal codes, even the legal codes of today, including the Code of Hammurabi. has one of the most significant legal codes of all time as well. His architectural and cultural contributions left an indelible mark on Mesopotamian civilization. I might note that maybe there aren't necessarily too much exact parallels between the code of Ur-Nammu and the modern legal codes. However, just having the concept of a legal code is clearly inspired by it. There's an author, Houston Chamberlain, I use a lot of his work has been debunked, but nonetheless he notes that the great significance of Homer just for being the first to create an epic of that scale, even to compare someone like a Shakespeare to Homer would not be giving Homer his justice, because of course Shakespeare was great and fantastic and undoubtable genius. Homer was something completely came out of nothing, and he was he wrote music. It was a complete work that had really came from almost nothing to zero to something absolutely great. And I think that could be said of this legal code. Perhaps it was influenced by Sargon or previous leaders as well, but it was sort of the first one, and I think the first one deserves particular attention and praise. And moving to Sargon, Sargon's legacy lies in his audacious vision of empire building, which we can see last to today. While the Akkadian Empire eventually fell, it set a precedent for future empires and left an enduring imprint on the development of governance and cultural exchange in the ancient Near East. I might even say, perhaps we can say that the EU or the United States or even Canada, the concept of having different provinces or different city-states amalgamated under one leader is likely, he was one of the first to conceptualize such an idea. As their conclusion, Ur-Nammu and Sargon, though distinct in their approaches and backgrounds, shared a common thread of audacity and vision. Both rulers transcended their humble origins, perhaps to varying degrees, to establish powerful empires, leaving legacies that continue to shape our understanding of early human civilization. Ur-Nammu's legal code and architectural achievements stand as a testament to his contributions, while Sargon's establishment of the Akkadian Empire set a precedent for future imperial ambitions. Together, they exemplify the transformative power of visionary leadership in the ancient world, or visionary leadership generally. So thank you very much for watching this episode of Ages of Empire, covering Ur-Nammu and Sargon of the Sumerian and Akkadian empires respectively. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you continue to support. Thank you so much.